hope you all are well. Thank you for coming to AWA's first ever guest speaker event. A little bit about AWA. AWA stands for the Asian Youth Writing Alliance. Our mission is to empower, amplify, and create a safe community for young Asian writers to grow and develop their writing as the next generation of voices in a diverse world. Our lineup for today is a fireside chat with Joanna Liu. And thank you all participants for the questions. And please note that some questions were condensed and revised for the sake of interview format. And the second part is the preview craft session, where you'll see a sneak peek of what our typical craft sessions look like. And keep a lookout on our website or email for regular craft sessions in June. So on to our guest speaker, Joanna Liu. Joanna is a writer from Lexington, Massachusetts, who writes prose and poetry around identity, memory, and social justice. She is selected as the first recipient of Bennington Young Writers Awards in Creative Nonfiction, the winner of Polyphony Lit's 2023 Motion Movement Contest, and is a National Scholastic Art and Writing medalist. She has also been recognized by the New York Times, Kissing Dynamite, Honey Literary, and more. You can find her as a general editor at the Cloud Sun Journal, the Dawn Review, or on Twitter. So, thank you so much, Joanna, for being here today. Before we get to our questions, just wanted to ask, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing really great. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a speaker here. I'm really honored. And yeah, I think we'll have a great time.
Yes. Thank you so much. Next, our first question is, how would you describe your writing journey from beginning to the present?
Awesome. So honestly, I would say just as a preface, the writing journey is really diverse and everyone's gonna have a different writing journey. For me, personally, I started writing when I was really young. I always liked storytelling. And so it was just something I did a lot as a kid. And obviously they weren't very good stories, but they make you happy. And then as I continued, I honestly felt I stopped writing for a bit because when you're writing as a teenager, especially if you want to do it a bit more competitively, there's definitely a lot of pressure and communities can be gatekept because there's only so many awards that one person can get or only that you can only participate in this many competitions, so it can get really stressful. And I definitely feel personally I stopped for a period just because I didn't enjoy that stress. However, the other really great thing about teen writing specifically is that this is also a space where you have a lot of really great communities. Oftentimes if you see an author that you really like, if you reach out to them on their socials, they're really happy to talk with you. And there's also communities around writing that you can find really quickly. Even just doing a quick Google search, you'll probably find some youth writer communities or some that are in your area. And so I feel that really propelled me into writing more during my sophomore summer. And that's when I spent a bulk of my time writing. I did a lot of writing during that summer. And then I would say now I'm more of I guess I'm more of a matured writer. I spent a lot of time when I was just starting kind of worried about competitions and stuff. And now that it's been a while and I've experienced a lot of things and talked with a lot of people, it's definitely more about enjoying the work you're creating and making sure you're creating the best output that you can. So that's been my journey. It's kind of boring, but yeah.
Oh no, that's good. I can definitely see pressure. You can't let pressure get to you in the way of your joy and fun of writing.
Yeah, that's definitely the most important thing to remember as a writer. It can get very difficult at times, like you feel like compelled to compare yourself to other people, but it's important to just keep going, as in any field, honestly.
Mm. Yeah. Uh, oh yes, our next question, thank you, is how has your understanding of the publishing process changed since the beginning of your writing journey? Was there anything you weren't expecting that you wish you knew?
Okay, this is a really great question, actually. Um, there's actually like just like before I begin, like I would say personally, I'm more like I know more about like teen writing and like publishing and literary magazines as opposed to like writing your own novel or something like that. So, specifically for like publishing online in magazines or even in print magazines, I would definitely say it's a really new process. There's actually if you check out the Lumiere review, they have a really great guide on their website on like how you submit and stuff. But essentially, like as you go into writing, you notice that like, oh, there's a lot to publishing that you might not know. Like each magazine or like each place you want to submit to, they have their own taste in writing. So for example, a magazine like um let's say Diode, which is like a very like they're like very based on like imagery. They like a lot of like vivid language and stuff is a lot different than like let's say Have Had Has, which is looking for the same imagery, but they also want more humor and like eccentric elements they're writing. So definitely making sure you understand the places you're submitting to. I definitely like there's like two schools of thought. Like one is like, oh, just submit whatever and eventually you'll hit something. For me, I've always liked to kind of look into things a bit more before I choose to submit. And if there's anything that I wasn't expecting, one thing that definitely like messed me up a bit was like this thing called simultaneous submissions, which is essentially where it's like you can submit to two magazines at once if they let you. And you want to be careful with those. Like there was one time where I got accepted into like a dream literary magazine and I was so excited. And then I realized I'd already like sent that to another magazine which accepted it like a couple weeks back. And so it's like you just want to make sure that when you're submitting a piece, you're aiming for like your dream magazine and you're not like I personally I'm kind of a disorganized person, so I don't like messing around with simultaneous submissions, but just make sure you keep track of what you're submitting and where you're submitting. And there's a really great resource, which was just like, it's pretty new. It's called Chill Subs. And that's one place where you can kind of like find places to submit or like track your own submission. So that was really helpful to me. Um,
Yeah, that's helpful. That's good advice. Like that sounds really hard. Like you got like your dream journal and you finally got in, and then you couldn't do it. Ah,
it, it was really funny. I was like literally screaming at lunch. I was like, oh my God,
oh
such a
no.
beautiful place. They pay you, and then it's like, oh, whoops, I already submitted somewhere else. So
Ah,
yeah. Honestly, I feel like it's like a learning process. Like as you make these mistakes and kind of learn about it, and you'll like you'll find yourself making like really dumb, which like mistakes that seem really dumb. Like, oh, I forgot to read their requirements. I had a student once who submitted prose to a poetry journal, which she should probably not do that. But yeah, as you make these mistakes, I feel like they are like a conduit for learning more about writing. So happy
ah,
accidents.
happy accidents. Okay, we can jump into our third question. Uh, how does your Asian identity play a role in your writing?
Awesome. This is a really great question. I was actually just writing an essay on like Asian writing and like maybe how that intersects with like teen writing. For me, I've always felt it's important for me to explore my Asian identity. It's not something that you need to do, but I especially enjoy how the teen writing sphere has offered students a space to really kind of explore and celebrate that identity. in ways that like historically publishing industries would not like accept these stories. Like Joy Luck Club was one of the very first Asian stories to be publicized on the mainstream. But like in the last couple of years, you will notice like a lot of Asian writers like accomplishing based on like the stories of their culture, which is something they could have not done in the past. At the same time, there's also an idea of like within the teen writing industry of like the exploitation or the necessity to write Asian pieces or any diaspora pieces, stories of immigrant trauma, stuff like that, because like there's this like idea which is like people who write these stories will win more awards, or like you can exploit your culture to write stories that are pleasing to like a larger audience. So I think there's like a really difficult challenge for you to balance those two ideas. Ultimately, though, I do write about my Asian identity because like as much as it like could be like a tool for something else, for me, it is a tool for me to express myself and express the stories I've known. And even though like some people may claim that, oh, your stories aren't unique, they're like what have shaped my upbringing. And so as an author who tells their own stories, it's what I will focus on a lot in my work. Although it also comes with the intersections of like other identities, such as my identity as like a queer individual and my identity as like a woman. So there's like a lot of intersections of identity. So I'd say it's a major part, but it also like wraps into a bunch of other things.
That's beautiful. Like it's a tool, really a tool you can use to really express yourself and get your voice out there. And I guess as a voice for yourself.
Definitely. Yeah.
Can jump into our fourth question. So, oh, this is perfect. What advice can you give for the Asian youth that are less privileged and are really given opportunities in the writing industry?
Okay, this is a really, I think this is a really important question that we do need to address because like for me, I'd honestly say I come from a position of relative privilege. There was like there's a couple really notable authors, like student authors in my area who I was able to learn from and like kind of like essentially get a head start from everyone else. But for a lot of Asian youths that are less privileged, especially because writing is so gatekept at the teen level, there's so many workshops you need to get into with like these crazy acceptance rates. So like a workshop or a journal like a Joy has like a 5 to 8% acceptance rate for like their teen mentorship program, which is absurd. Writing should not be gate kept. And even if you do get into one of these programs, summer camps like Kenyan can cost you upwards of $3,000 for like 2 weeks. So it's definitely an industry where privilege exists. But I will say that at the same time, there is an effort by a lot of people to make sure that writing can be accessed for free. Or you can learn writing for like a relatively like inexpensive cost. And you can also access these communities. There's a lot of like youth groups online. There's a community called Young Poets Workshops, which I really admire. And they work on a lot of like uh, workshops and other opportunities to make sure that um, writing isn't as gate kept as it is like currently and more people can access it. There's like a program called Grub Street, which I think it might just be in Massachusetts or it might be um, all across the world. I know there's at least one in Maryland and there's one in Massachusetts, but that program essentially offers like free like writing opportunities. You're actually paid to attend their summer program. They'll give you $800 about for 4 weeks, which is mind blowing to me. And essentially, I encourage you like don't be discouraged. The writing community is very gatekept, and definitely there are a lot of opportunities which you can only access if you know like certain people or you have a certain amount of money to afford like a certain camp. However, there are opportunities. Ocean Vuong, who is I love him. and he's also like one of the leading faces of poetry right now, was one of these like less privileged youths who eventually grew up to like essentially be an extremely successful poet that we all look up to. So there is like like the opportunities out there, and even though it's more difficult, there are communities making it possible for less privileged writers to stand out, receive opportunities, and excel. So I'd honestly encourage you to try and seek out those opportunities. I'm sorry that wasn't like as specific, but it's just really just about, if you're passionate about writing, you um to try and seek out, like I'll type in some places like young poets workshops. These are the places I just named. And then there's also a lot of like literary magazines which you can find, either be a staff on or apply to or submit to. So even though it is, there aren't as many opportunities, you can still seek them out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. Like,
I Yeah, there's definitely a lot of room for criticism within like the writing industry, especially within like, I don't know that much about like publication, but I do know it's like heavily based in like who you know and who you're friends with, who can like
mm,
get your book published essentially. But um there's also a lot of opportunities for like self-publishing and making your voice known, even if it isn't like something that other people may value. So I think it's really tough, but I'd honestly encourage you to seek like new opportunities. And then like I just want to emphasize, which I'm doing it in a very roundabout way, that even though it is very gate kept and it's easy to get discouraged, there are opportunities out there. And my advice is to just seek them out. Look on Twitter. Twitter's a really great place. I don't know why. All the writers are on Twitter. Social media, look up like youth opportunities in particular, because those are usually more accessible. And you'll find some success. And I know a lot of writers who have found success by doing that. So
okay. Well, I'm glad there sounds like there are opportunities and there is hope. And okay, we can move on to question 5. So, any advice for people who struggle to celebrate their success and share accomplishments?
okay. Honestly, I'd say like personally for me, I sometimes I won't like say if I get published somewhere, or I usually like this is something that I'm actively working on. But for me, like what's helped is like when you like make or have a community of writers, such as like AYWA or like any other community, it could be a local one. The best thing you can do to celebrate your accomplishments is like to work alongside a community. And that way you can like share your losses and victories together. Um, a poetry group that I'm currently in, like we have like a channel for sharing like our wins and losses so that anything can be celebrated or discussed about. And honestly, I feel like um you just want to make sure that like each like piece you write is like something that you're proud of, whether it gets like whether it is like successful by the measure of a competition or not. Yeah. So it's another thing that I'd say is like oftentimes like your successes can like help you like build more skills or access more opportunities, and that's like definitely something that you should celebrate, right? I know one writer, I was talking with him, he had won like a very major competition, like young arts level, like finalists, stuff like that. And I was like, aren't you scared that you won't be able to celebrate your successes after that, or you won't be able to learn anything after that? But in fact, he had told me that young arts had provided him with so many opportunities to meet other people and had really inspired his work. And so I like to put it shortly, if you celebrate your accomplishments and share them, it might provide you even more opportunities to grow and succeed. So
That's a good message. It can be very hard to stay humble at the same time, wanting to really appreciate success. And
definitely.
on to our sixth question. So, favorite line you've written?
Awesome. So I never think of a favorite line, but I think the most memorable line I think of when I'm reading my own work is there's a line I wrote in a nonfiction piece, which was pain makes small words sing. And it's such a simple line. There's no like nuance to it. Normally, I'm a very image-based poet and a very language-based poet, and that line is neither of those things. But I feel like it acts as a thesis to my personal style of writing. So I like one of my like literary theses, as if you can call it that, is the idea that I write to like examine a canon of violence and colonialism which has historically affected marginalized peoples and then reshape it into something that I can claim as my own. And this idea of like making like pain making small words sing is like really reflective of that part of my writing, which I hold near and dear to my heart. And so even though it's not very reflective of my personal style, I feel like it's a really great example of like why I write and my literary drive and where that comes.
Wow, pain makes small words sing. That's does it have like a meaning of yeah, that's deep. Okay. Can move on to our seventh question. I believe this is our last one. Uh, Anything else you want to share to empower or inspire the other young, aspiring Asian writers out there?
My message to you would probably be the simplest message possible, write every day. When I was just getting started, I was in a really rough patch. I literally attended like a bunch of competitions in a row, lost all of them. I have a spreadsheet somewhere on my phone, which just shows like it's just a scrollable list of competitions and just like a sidebar, which is like win or fail, and all of them were
Oh,
fail. But we overcame, we're strong. And I essentially spent that summer just writing. Um, Scholastic, I'm sure a lot of you guys know Scholastic Art and Writing. It's an annual writing and art competition. It's one of the biggest in the nation. Hundreds of thousands of people participate each year, and they have a summer workshop. So I did their summer workshop. It's completely free. It's like a writing marathon. You write with a bunch of people on Zoom. And then while I was doing that, I also tried out writing classes, wrote a lot on my own. I think I wrote like in between like 50 to 60 or even 70 pages of work during that summer. And I'd say, so my advice is just to write and also to read. Make sure you have literary influences. I think one of the biggest pitfalls, whether it's in art or writing or any artistic field, is to believe that, oh, my creativity will be limited if I read other people's works, when in fact, I'd say it's the opposite. I personally was not a very big fan of poetry when I first started, but after reading the works of, I was really inspired by Richard Saikin, Ocean Vuong, Ming Chang, Quan Berry, Chen Chen, Victoria Chang. I could go on, Jericho Brown, but being inspired by a lot of like the great, I guess we can call them the great literary poets of our time, I definitely like began to look at writing in a new light and take a new approach to it, especially since I saw like what it can accomplish and how it can make people feel. So make sure you write and read, pretty basic, but a lot of the most successful and like accomplished writers that I know are the ones who seek every opportunity to write and read and to gain more information about the world around them. So,
Mm.
and then a final piece of advice for like Asian writers specifically, don't feel pressured or like discouraged by the fact that there's a how do I say this? There's a precedent for like, oh, you have to write Asian or you have to write diasporic works or works about an immigrant culture because I have a lot of friends who are really do enjoy writing about their heritage. I personally like exploring my past. I know there's also a lot of people who don't like it for one reason or another. Either way, you shouldn't feel pressured to do it because it'll help you win competitions or whatnot. You should write in a way that simply makes you feel happiest or brings you the most joy. And that's honestly also going to be your best writing and your most interesting writing.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. Just creating within your own story, no like pressure. And Joanna, thank you so much. I feel encouraged and empowered by your story. And I hope to continue to write my story like you write yours. Let's have a round of applause for Joanna. Thank you again for being here. Oh,
And thank
yes.
you so much for inviting me.
Yes, thank you so much. Mm. Uh, let's take a 5-minute break. You can go to the bathroom, get water. We'll come back at 2:35. Hello. Hopefully we're all trickling back in. We'll get started on our second portion shortly. Give a thumbs up if you're here. Okay, awesome. Looks like we're mostly all here. So next up, we'll have our preview craft session. You're welcome to come on camera if you would like, but if not, no worries. And I don't know about you, but after hearing from Joanna, I feel creativity juices flowing through me, and I'm ready to write with you all. So get out a Google Docs file or pen and paper or whatever you use to write. For today's craft session, we'll do a vision board exercise. Normally in our craft sessions, each one of us would put together our own vision boards and then pick someone else's to write about. However, for the sake of time today, I'll give you all one. And so based on these images, write a poem or a short story that is inspired by them. And if we have enough time, we will share. And before we start writing, if you are using Google Docs, please share a link to this email in the chat and so I can screen share. And if you're using paper, you can read aloud when we share. And no worries if you do not want to share, it is encouraged but not required.